Welcome to day number 3 of the Untangling Overwhelming Emotions Challenge. My name is Sven Lauch and I am an emotional logic coach, and today I want to talk about the voices that are going around and round in our head when we are emotionally overwhelmed. Now, you might have noticed that over the last 2 days, I've tried to share and teach you that it's important to deconstruct that massive ball of overwhelm. So in the first day, we talked about deconstructing the overwhelm into specific situations. Yesterday, we talked about deconstructing what you are feeling about a specific situation by naming the emotions and feelings. And today, I want to help you to deconstruct all these voices that are in our heads. Now, I used this example of my time between Christmas and New Year where I was very anxious. And it was actually in that time that I became very aware of the voices inside myself. I think it was the first time that I really took the time to sit there and think like, what am I actually telling myself? I have heard that so many times when people said like, oh, don't tell yourself off, or don't say to yourself you're not good enough, or don't say that something is wrong with you, or all these kind of things. And I always felt like, I don't say that to myself. But when I took attention and focus to these inner voices, I realized I did exactly that. I told myself it's never going to work. I told myself that I'm not good enough. I asked myself, why is this happening over and over again? It will never change. And all those voices were going around and round in my head. All the thinking space was almost taken over by all this negative talk. Now, I know there's so many people say like, do sweet talk, talk positively, don't tell yourself that you're not good enough, but tell yourself that you are enough. But what I found, what I have always done with those approaches is, I have tried to just reject my inner voice and try to deny it and try to silence it and trying to replace it by just proclaiming, I'm good enough, I can do this, I can change this. And I found it just doesn't work, at least for me. But now I have a little bit more understanding why it didn't work. Because, as I said, what I've tried to do by telling myself I'm good enough is I try to reject and silence the voice of it's never going to work. There's value in tuning in. There's value in listening to the authentic voice that is going on inside you. And here's why. When I hear the voice, it's never going to work, I need to ask myself the question, what is never going to work? I need to ask myself the question, why has it failed so many times? When I begin to answer those questions of what am I saying and why am I saying this, and asking more specifically when I hear, for instance, it's never going to work, to ask myself, what is never going to work? And why has it failed before? That I might come to answers and realize something very important. In my case, for instance, something that really became apparent is that I actually struggle to build relationships. And when I heard this voice inside me that things are never going to work, I basically realized that why it never worked properly was I just never learned to follow up on people. I never learned to spend time with people just for the sake of spending time with people. I had realized that in my childhood, and because my parents were under constant surveillance from the secret police in East Germany, that I was never allowed to have friends around. And that I also basically never really went to other friends' houses and stayed at their place and played at their house. So through my childhood and through the whole situation of my parents trying to protect us as a family, I basically just never learned the skills to build a relationship that is not just a spontaneous encounter outside, but it's an active asking for a time, going to the people, so really spending quality time together one-to-one. I only experienced playing with kids when we were outside, where usually there were lots of kids and we just played. And when they were not outside, I could not play with them. I'm almost 48, and I have now made it a mission to reach out to people that are important to me, to ask them for a time, to call people, to just have a chat. And I can witness to you that my whole anxiety that I had between Christmas and New Year began to plummet the moment I had realized there's something I need to put my focus on, and there's something I need to invest into and need to learn. I reached out to a friend and say like, hey, can we meet just for lunch or for dinner? And I'd like to ask you, how do you build relationships? How do you follow up on people? How do you keep going with things? I only learned this because I paid attention to the negative talk, because I was willing to listen in. I was willing to question what I was saying to myself, and I was willing to dig and see what are the specifics behind each of those negative sentences that I was telling myself. So I want to encourage you, don't just try to ignore the self-talk. Don't just try to ignore the negative self-talk. Learn to listen in, possibly write it down. My wife, for instance, does something called stream of consciousness, where you simply just sit down and you write down exactly what is just going through your head, no matter how chaotic it is. And again, it helps you to take things from an invisible inside into a visible place where you consciously can pay attention to it and deal with it. So write down, what are you saying to yourself? Listen in what you're telling yourself, and try to ask yourself, what is it about? And why are things happening over and over again? Why am I telling myself this? And what might be the reasons why it previously has failed so many times? Because then learning can happen. And that is what they are there for. They want you to pay attention and take action. And the moment we do that, you will see your emotions will go down, you become much calmer, and you can spend more time on solving issues instead of being frozen and stuck. If you have any questions, If you have comments, just leave them below and I will answer them. I will respond to every comment. If you received an email from me for this challenge, then feel free to respond to the email. Reach out. I know deconstructing our inner voices can be really tough because we just don't want to hear it. And it can be very helpful to reach out to someone to help you do that. Tomorrow, I will look into, again, emotions, and that we sometimes use our emotions to try to cancel out each other and therefore miss the message behind it. My name is Sven, and I see you tomorrow.